the basic pinch pot process. By the way, pinch pots are the oldest method of construction. As soon as humans needed something to grind food in, they started making this really simplistic form of pottery, and it was called a pinch pot. So we're gonna do that, and we usually learn it early on because it is the easiest, simplest form. You only need a small amount of clay. So I've wedged this clay, like you already know how to do. I've wedged it, and I only am gonna take about a half a pound of clay. Half a pound of clay, you can always measure it, or it's about the size of like a kiwi, something small like that. Anytime you make a pinch pot, something good to remember is that the ball you start with will about double in size. So a ball this size is gonna make a pinch pot that's about twice as big. Good rule of thumb when you go later on and you're trying to figure out how much clay do I need for a certain thing, think about it. I want the ball to be half the size of what I want my end result to be. Okay, so the first step is to wedge the clay. And the second step is to prep it, which is rounding it with our hands. I think this is stupid and doesn't work well. I think this works better. So I'm using the palm of my hand to kind of smack it or beat the ball into shape. The better ball you have, the nicer pinch pot you'll end up with. If I start with an oblong shaped ball, more oval or egg shaped, I might end up with a taller pinch pot. If I start with just a weird wonky piece of clay, I will probably end up with a weird wonky pinch pot. Okay, don't spend forever on this because I'm drying out the clay, all right? And so the more you spend time on this, the drier your clay will be, the more cracks you have later, the more frustration you'll have. And so just get it round and then move on. Next step, insert your thumb into the ball. So I'm gonna take my thumb and I'm gonna stick it into the clay. Notice this is a very handheld process. Once I've wedged my clay, I don't need a table for this process at all. Okay, I stick my thumb into the clay, and you can see it's gonna be the start of the pot. So I already have an opening, and I have a bottom and some sidewalls. I'm gonna make all of those things better. With pinch pots, our real main focus is to get our walls a particular thickness and to make sure they're all even. So for the bottom, we want it to be about a 1/2 inch to a 1/4 inch thick. So I need a couple of tools to help me with that. A pin tool and a ruler, because we don't really know measurements that well, are gonna help. Here's how you measure the thickness of the bottom. Leave your thumb in the pot, okay? If I leave my thumb in, I can take my pin tool from the other side and I can push it until it hits my thumb. So right now, ow, 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 it's poking my thumb, okay? So I don't wanna hurt myself, but I do want it to feel the pin tool. Once I feel the pin tool on my thumb, if I put my other finger on the pin tool here, okay, I've got my finger here on the outside edge and the tip of the pin tool is touching my thumb. If I pull this out without moving my finger, pull it out without moving my finger, I have now made a measurement of how thick that clay is. Without moving my finger, I want to put that on a ruler and see how fat it is. And on this ruler, you may not be able to see, but I can tell I'm just shy of a 1/2 inch. So your goal for the base of your pinch pot is about a 1/4 to a 1/2 inch. I'm on the high side. If I wanted to, I could stick my thumb in just a little bit more, make it a little thinner. I could recheck it, pull it out without moving, measure it. I'm now closer to a 1/4 inch than a 1/2 inch, and I would say that's a good thickness. How do you get rid of these holes? Just push the clay back over it. It'll go away through the rest of the process. Okay, so I have my base set, and now I'm ready to actually pinch the walls out. So the number one rule for pinch pots is keep your thumb on the inside and all 4 fingers on the outside. Don't try to shove your fingers inside of it. So I want to have thumb on inside, 4 fingers on outside, and I'm just going to start to pinch. Really obvious, really simple. I turn the pot, I pinch. I turn the pot, I pinch. And the idea is to try to keep the walls getting thinner, and you want to make them uniform. You want to make them the same thickness, top to bottom and all the way around. If I kind of think about the pressure, right, I'm squeezing the same amount every time, I will have a better chance of having even walls. I can switch hands if my hand gets tired, but notice my thumb is still on the inside, okay? So you're pinching, there's an action and a reaction, between your fingers. And I'm not just pinching up here at the rim, I'm also pinching way down here at the bottom. When you feel like you're getting a pretty decent little pot with nice even walls, it's time to check your walls. You're gonna do the same check process we did on the bottom. You're gonna do it in the walls, and you should do it in 3 places. You should check it at the top. So I'm gonna put it down here. You can check it at the top. I push it in until I see it or until it hits my finger. Put my other finger on the outside, pull out without moving, measure. So I'm at a 1/4 inch there. I want to check in the middle of the wall. So I checked up here at the top. I want to check in the middle of the wall. I'm at about a 1/4 inch. And I want to check way down here at the base. That's the part that's usually the part it's thicker we forget about. And sure enough, mine, I can tell already, it's more like a 1/2 inch down there. So my work to be done is down here at the base of the pot. I don't want to pinch up here anymore. I'm already at a 1/4 inch. So now I'm going to focus my energy on pinching down low. Thumb inside, 4 fingers on the outside, and I continue to pinch. Okay, so the idea is spend time on this, okay? You won't know what it feels like, a 1/4 inch. You need to measure it with a ruler until you get better, okay? And keep pinching. Notice mine's cracking a little. I don't know if you can tell, but it is cracking. It looks kind of like elephant skin. I'm not freaking out. I'm not smashing it up and starting over. I'm just letting it crack because I know I can go back and finish that surface a little bit later. So don't freak out if yours is cracking. And keep working that surface, trying to get it, the walls, as even as possible. If you feel a thick spot, pinch harder. You feel a thin spot, stop pinching there, move on. And that's the basic of how to make a pinch pot. One last thing you can do after you've checked your walls and you sort of have it all great is you should then go back and do some refining. So there's a few things you can do to refine a pinch pot. I'm just going to show you the basics, which are, if your rim is really weird and uneven, and the rim is the top part of the pot here, you can always trim your rim. We would do that with some kind of a cutting tool. So a fettling knife is probably really great and works well. The other tool that you might want to use is our blade tool, which is more like an X-Acto knife. So this is much sharper than this one. Either one will work. When you go to trim your rim, you have a choice. I could do it decoratively, right? So I could do like a zigzag trim where I'm actually trimming this on an angle to create a decorative triangular kind of effect. You would do better than I'm doing, right? Or if I just want to even it out, which is usually what we want to do, just even it out. I'm going to take my cutting tool, and I'll show you with the fettling knife this time. And what you should do is place that fettling knife into the clay, and then you want to kind of just support with 2 fingers, support the rim as you drag it across. The one thing that you don't want to do when you're trimming your clay is saw at it. You know, when you're carving a pumpkin or something and you start doing this, do you see how my whole wall is wiggling and it's not even cutting the clay? So instead, I stick the tool in and then I drag to cut. I drag to cut. And you can see I'm actually turning the pot with the other hand as I drag to cut. Okay, you have to do that carefully. You should probably be more down at eye level so that you're actually trimming it evenly. And that's a good way to get a nice even rim. So that's one way to refine. And the other thing we always try to refine is the surface. We don't always want a smooth surface, but I'm going to show you how to do that. If you have a damp sponge, so I wet this sponge and I squeezed it out. It's not dripping wet, but there's definitely moisture in here. When I put my fingers on that sponge, or my hand, right, it's getting wet. Take that wetness, that wet finger, and you can start to refine your surface. So by rubbing just a little bit of a wet finger, notice I am not using slip, I am not drenching this with water. All I'm doing is rubbing a wet finger on the surface. I can start to even out my rim, and I can also get rid of all these little cracks that were really bothering me before. So just by rubbing, I can get rid of cracks. You have to be deliberate I have to actually be pushing the clay. I can't just be petting it, right? I gotta actually push it. And because of that, it's good to support on the other side. So whether I'm holding it in my hand and supporting, or whether it's on the table and I'm supporting, I support as I rub. So that's how we finish our pinch pots, by refining the rim and by refining the surface. And then from there you can usually add more if you want. That's the basics though.